There we go. And turn on my do not disturb. So again, yeah, thank you everybody for being here. Steve, I was just giving everybody kind of the drill of what we're working on. I have a jumping off topic that I want to share quickly, but then I want to get into your check-ins and your projects and your summer plans and things you're working on as quickly as we can. Uh, but I really this week's mastermind was really influenced by, I mean, I follow a lot of other groups, and especially it seems like I've been seeing more and more of this in the piano teacher central group or in the different piano teachers groups, this kind of real fear of doing and of confrontation and of upsetting people. And I experienced it the other week when with one of my own students, because it's so easy to comment and be like, well, what I do is I follow my policy and I'm very strict about it, and I do this, and I just tell them. It's so easy to say that, but the reality is that these people, and when you're with a student or a family, new or old, whether you've been with them for a long time or not, it can be really difficult to either assert yourself or to speak clearly or to not get emotional, to not be judgmental, to be okay with people being reactive and not being reactive in return. So it's a great exercise, but I wanted to talk about a couple scenarios as a jumping off point, because I know that a lot of us are at very varying degrees of what we do and how long we've been doing it. But I wanted to kind of jump off as uh, a topic, a couple scenarios, and some strategies that really help me and that I've learned, and hopefully having more being able to embrace these somewhat difficult moments instead of avoiding them. Because I think if there's one bottleneck, if there's one thing that's holding people back from making their awesome ideas come to fruition, it's the moments where it gets a little tough to be like, oh man, am I really going to send out this rate increase letter? I'm not going to do it. Right. So I wanted to share some encouragement about that, some things I've learned, and hear ideas that you have, and then bounce into the others. So let's just look at a couple scenarios that happen in our world quite a bit. One of which is sending out a rate increase, right? We'll say, okay, cool, it's time. I really want to take a vacation this summer, and in order to do that, I need to make a little bit more. Plus, I'm just a little bit under the market. I need to send out a rate increase to my students, right? And what you see in the comments when people start talking about this is how worried they are about what people are going to say. I checked all the websites for what other people in my neighborhood are charging, and the school's charging this, and I just know I'm going to send this out, and they're going to get really mad, and my students are going to get really mad. And the conventional wisdom is to say, just do it, it's cool, go big, whatever, don't worry about it. But where the worry and the anxiety about this is real, and it's real enough that a lot of people end up not doing what they were going to do, right? And there's beautiful ways in between. That's for another conversation. This is about that emotion of actually doing something. Whether you say, okay, I'm only going to raise my rates for new students so I can see how that goes. There's ways around that, but we're saying we're going all in. We're going to do this. And so we worry, and we're all anxious about it. And that's one scenario that causes a lot of emotion in us. But then we say we finally push the trigger, we send it out. What happens? No one says anything, right? But what we want to know is what when they do, right? What happens when someone does say, what? I'm not paying like a 20%, whatever that thing is, that pushback. The thing that you were afraid of happens. That's what we want to talk about today, because we want to seek those moments out, whether it's asserting ourselves about our rates or our policy. And we can lump this right into another moment, which is kind of what happened to me, which is a student had confirmed a lesson. They hadn't shown up. They blew me off. And I knew Fons was going to charge them, right? And I started worrying about it. And I was like, oh man, are they going to be mad? It's not like that these people can't afford it. It's not like they know how the deal is. They got the notification. And I started wanting to reach out to them and make sure, not to see if they were okay, to see if they were angry, right? Because in a different space, I'd reach out to be like, hey, is everybody cool? Am I getting a car wreck? Yeah, whatever, you got billed. In this moment, the honesty is I was anxious that they were going to get mad and they were going to say, oh, you billed me and I didn't show up. There was no reality in this at all. There was nothing that gave me any reason to believe this way. They've never acted this way before. This was all me. This was my emotion. And in both of these cases, the main anxiety never happened, right? And this is kind of what I took away from this moment. I was like, the thing I was anxious for didn't actually happen because they didn't care, right? I kind of botched how I dealt with it, but they didn't care. If they had cared, and that's that conversation today, is when someone balks at your price, someone pushes back because they blew off a lesson or a cancellation policy and they become reactive or angry. Someone doesn't like a rate increase. That's the moment. 95% of the time, just like all anxiety, these things don't happen, right? But when they do, is the most amazing time for growth. And it's the most amazing time to learn about ourselves and our relationships and practice some different skills and compassion and all these things. But the most important thing is as we go through life and we're trying to achieve something, is to say, oh, I'm going to do this thing. It's scary. And I accept the fact that worrying about something that probably isn't going to happen has zero effect, right? So we're not being present. Anytime that you are being anxious about something that's happening in the future, you are not being present to this moment that we're in, right? And that is that's the thesis for this whole talk today, which is just like when we're with our students or when we're studying or whatever it is that we're practicing, we need to be present. And if you're worried about something that may happen, great, but you're not being present in this moment. And so there's no benefit to it, no benefit at all. You can think, I'm going to practice what I'm going to say if they get mad about my rate increases. That doesn't help you because that's not going to be as beneficial as responding with presence in the moment when it does happen. So the technique that I used with myself last week that I've been practicing that I thought was really helpful was twofold. One, you're in a challenging moment with a client or a student or whatever, and you're talking about something, is you first off is you're going to watch your own emotions, right? And that's what I did to myself. I was like, oh my gosh, I am really nervous right now. And I'm also, uh, I'm going to go in one of two directions. I'm either going to be that weird, like get big and puff up and try to assert myself, or I'm going to get small and I'm going to work this like, oh, I'm really sorry. And I can feel one of these two things coming out of this emotion.
Mhm.
And the moment that you start observing your emotions, you're in control of the situation, right? You are now present to this moment to say, wow, in this moment that this person's mad at me, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, right? I
Mhm.
was worried that this was coming, but now it's here. I can handle this. It's going to end soon, right? This is going to be something that's going to be over in 5 minutes. So that really helped me say, okay, cool. How can I be cool in this moment? And I'm going to have three tools. I have three options of what I can do right now. And maybe you can correct me if you know more, but I see three choices in this difficult moment. One, I can do something about it, right? I can say, I'm going to assert myself. I'm going to, I'm going to say, this is how it is. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to be non-reactive. I'm going to have action about the thing that I'm not okay with. My second option is to remove myself from the situation, right? And I'm probably not going to do that in this moment, but this applies to all of life. As you can say, hey, I'm either going to do something or I'm going to remove myself from this situation. I'm going to walk away from it. Maybe we're not going to work together anymore. I'm just going to say, oh, this isn't a good moment for me to be in. My third option that I can choose is I can just accept it for what it is and be like, oh, yeah, you're mad. I did this thing. It will pass, and I'm going to do nothing. But having that be your plan allows you to be improvise in the moment, right? That's your skill set. Those are your instruments. These are the riffs you have. And I'm going to choose one of these things. I'm going to sit here and accept you being upset with me for a moment and just kind of observe what you're doing. Or I'm going to assert myself, or I could also make the change to say, I'm going to practice radical compassion right now. I'm like, oh my gosh, I hear what you're saying. Your child's relationship's really important to me. You're obviously upset. This time I'm going to give you a refund, right? I can do that because I'm choosing mindfully, not out of fear or reactivity or emotion, but saying, hey, this is the thing I'm just going to choose right now, right? And then this is going to be over. And then I can move on to the next thing. And this, for me, and this process I'm using a lot in business too, right? As I'm working with a lot of different brands now and having a lot of meetings, and there's often a lot of friction, a lot of tension. And I'm finding this to be really helpful to bring into engaging with anybody, whether it's my students, my clients in business, as I have this kind of rubric. And then it allows me, and I'll kind of wrap this up, to A, do the thing that was hard, right? I'm like, okay, cool. I have to have this difficult conversation with a coworker, a student's parents. I have to send out this rate increase for my lessons. I'm going to do this thing. And instead of being anxious for something that might happen, assume that there's a 3% chance something might come up. If it does, I'm prepared for it to use this skill set that I'm developing. And I'm just talking about my personal experience of this. The other side is this gives you the space to observe what they're doing and say, oh, wow, this person's like really getting up on their soapbox. This isn't who they are. For whatever reason, they're uncomfortable. And I can be compassionate to them. Like, is it a money thing? Are they exhausted? Yeah, we're all exhausted. Is it someone out of work? And it's really effective at diffusing the situation with anybody that you're working with. So anyway, that has been a really effective tool and a conversation starter that I wanted to share with you guys. And I wanted to hear your thoughts about difficult moments. Steve, I know you have like really good feedback and really good ideas for how you do that stuff like a pro. And then we can just kind of jump into your check-ins. I don't want to take any more time because I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to share. But if somebody wants to have some feedback or take it away, Steve, if you want to just say hi or
Okay. Hey, folks.
Steve.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Eric. I'm Steve. I see some new faces here. I've been around the Fons Masterminds for a while. So I'm a saxophone player. I'm in just north of Seattle, and I also perform and record and do a lot of improvisation workshops. But based on Eric's question, I was reflecting because early on in my teaching career, I had a lot more of these moments where someone would say, well, so and so charges this, or how come we have to pay for this makeup? And I would get defensive, fire off the response while feeling charged, like, well, I'm a professional and this is have to feed my family and blah, blah, blah. And this is how it goes. And the one that actually bugged me the most is I had someone, it was like a college professor referred me for teaching their kid saxophone. And she wrote back. And at that point, my rates weren't even, they were maybe slightly above average, not crazy high. But she said, well, we can afford your rates. We're just shocked, or you're contributing to the gap between the haves and have-nots in our society, and I can't support anything like that. So, and I was like, and then like,
Boo.
you're making a lot of assumptions, and I work for this nonprofit, and I do scholarships and blah 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 blah, and I didn't hear anything back. So that didn't really help. But I haven't had any. I mean, I had to send those things where there's anxiety in my own head. That happens. But as far as confrontation with clients, there has not been many at all in the last several years. I'm kind of reflecting on what changed. Part of it is I didn't want to be reactive, but also spending more time in the early stages, like making sure I'm building a good relationship with the family rather than like, oh yeah, 2:30, Tuesday's open, you can drop Johnny off, and the parents don't read anything you send, and then there's conflict over like a miscommunication over policies. But I like doing the meet and greet where I like meet with the family and just, I don't call it a trial lesson, but it's like no charge. I make sure their instrument works and we talk and I get a read on it. If it's clear the kid doesn't want to be there, or, the parents are forcing him into it, I can sometimes some red flags come up, not too often. And taking students more through referral. Then we talk about all the policies in person, and then they know me. So it feels like a relationship with someone they know. So then if there is something funny, a miscommunication or a payment thing, then we just start off in a more positive, like, it's not, they're not feeling like they're being ripped off. And also what people know about you before they contact you. So if I get a good referral from someone they respect, oh, my band teacher said you're the person I need to take lessons with, they're just way more open for, if I get the sense that they're just shopping around, comparing, I don't know, I'm less likely to even respond. Because if it's someone that comes from a really good referral, or they know specifically that this is what they want, it just makes the whole thing much easier. And coming up with policies that are clear and fair. I used to do the thing. I mean, your policy can be, hey, if I cancel a lesson, you get a refund. If you cancel, tough crap, which was what mine was for a long time. But it just didn't feel great. And I just kind of switched it around where I did raise my rates and made it more flexible. Then someone can cancel, then someone else on the waiting list can take the spot. And like, my bottom line is better, and they feel like sometimes they feel more respected. works for me as a solo teacher. If I was managing a school of teachers, that doesn't work. The more flexible plan. So I'm trying to even think of, yeah. So was that starting off on the right foot? The other thing I want to say before I take up all the time is, if it's just someone who I haven't built a relationship with, like that person who emailed me and said, I'm contributing to the haves and have nots, like, I'm not going to take that. If I got that now, I would just probably ignore a short, respectful reply and just ignore it, not trying to convince them to anything. Like, that person's not your client. So, but if I got some feedback like that from someone who's been like a long time awesome student and know the family, and then something went wrong and I have some kind of confrontation that they're not happy about something, when it is like your ideal person, I would really take a moment and reflect and then have a conversation, and we've built trust and I know things are cool. Like, okay, something's wrong and I really want to address it and not ignore it. So it really depends for Eric's framework, whether you ignore it or whether you do something. It often has to do, yeah, with the background of that person. So if it's just someone being difficult or yeah, or trying to get a deal if they don't need one, yeah, I spend a lot less time, reflecting or even having a conversation. It can become clear early on that maybe if it works, they just seem to be quite difficult and confrontational right off the bat, which is usually a sign it's not going to work out long term anyway.
You know what,
Okay.
Steve? That's really cool. A couple really important things I think that you mentioned. And I think
Yeah.
it's just important that people like there's no one way to do it. You're like, I tried this and then I did this and this works for me. And that's great. Right. And so that's really important for everybody. The second thing is like you're not getting your self-worth out of like what a potential student says to you doesn't know anything about music. Right. At this point, you're like, okay, whatever. Yeah, I'm not contributing to you don't need to push back on those things because that's not where you're getting your self-worth from. And I feel like the first 10 years that I was teaching and playing music, I was really susceptible to big emotions from just like things people would say, whether it's colleagues or students or clients or people, whatever, gigs. And that's a really cool place to be in. And the
Yeah,
idea
that's
is,
true.
can you build that energy into your work life sooner? And right. And that's like, I think the big encouragement is when you do, then you're in much more control. And then you're in much more, you're able to be more awesome. And you're also putting people at ease who maybe would switch into that, whatever that kind of gross thing is that puts you off. You're like, no, I'm not going to email you back. You're not for me. It
Mhm.
might bring out a better side of them that allows them to come into your atmosphere, uh, right? Because you've set them up to be more comfortable there. So I think there's a lot of wins there. Let's pass the baton. Would somebody like to like pick up on that and maybe share their experience? Or we've already seen your cat, Teresa, but yeah, you go ahead. I think we have plenty of time for everybody to share a little bit. What's going on, Teresa? I'm always going to give her a hard time, by the way. And she's muted, just like every time. Teresa, you're muted. We can't hear you, Teresa. You're muted. She's still talking. You got to unmute. Let me see if I can unmute for you.
Mute. There we go. I was going to say is that right now I'm in a fairly good place. Uh, once again, I'm going to have no slots. I'm in the process of changing some things around, but I've been finding a lot with my students, if I can bring the parents on board. I had one child that earlier this year was challenging me. He was already taking piano, but he wanted to be awesome with no work. And we've all been there. I want to skip to the part where I'm awesome. And finally I got his parents to help support him in his practice. And he's kind of turned around. He did solo and ensemble this year. He got a good rating. He's understanding what I'm talking about. I've been working his piano teacher. We're in the same building, so we are able to kind of tag team him as far as just coordinating what she's been doing to help him with his practice habits, so I can help reinforce those on my side and vice versa, and talking about certain techniques and stuff like that. And the only person I'm having an issue with right now is one young man that he's kind of neurodivergent. I don't know where he is on the spectrum, but he's really smart. He loves playing, but he brings through the door so much emotional baggage that gets in the way of his playing. So at this point, I keep telling him, I think you're wonderful. We've just got to get down to not going through all these hoops you jump through and stumble on. So I think I'm going to do a weekly affirmation when he walks in the door. You know,
And that's Teresa, if that's the worst of your challenge, you're just smooth sailing right now, because you know what that's like you're the perfect person for that gig. You have all this emotional reserve and love and patience. I mean, I'm sure that's a really important time. And that's a different trip, right? It shouldn't be, but like when you're with a student, being able to have the reserve to be able to be ultra compassionate and present, and like that's the best gift you can give your student, right? Is to be 100% in that moment with them, focused with them, being nowhere else, and you know, patient when probably other people aren't. So I'm glad you have that person. That's cool.
I did threaten I would talk to his dad. Don't talk to dad.
Yeah, you got this. Very cool. Would you like to, hey, would somebody else like to jump in? Oh, I see you there. Yeah, go for it, Anna. You're muted. I muted you though. Oh, no, you muted yourself. Sorry. There you go.
All right. I just wanted to say I learned so much from the people in the Fons Facebook group, and they're so generous with sharing their experience, and it's so helpful. I sent out a substantial rate increase for the fall just now, and no one said anything. That was awesome.
They never do.
However, I am finding that so in school I used to teach without a policy. Everyone took advantage of me, of course. And I've been teaching with a policy for about 2 years now. And most of my students I had taught previously. So like I got them on board with the policy, but I'm finding they still don't like my makeup policy. Like they have to let me know in time or else we don't reschedule. And I always get pushback on that. And I get it most from people who are friends. Like we were family friends before I became their kids teacher. That's so hard.
Ooh, you know, this is an interesting one. Can you just tell everybody a little about what you do, where you teach, and what you're about?
Yeah, so um I teach violin. I'm a Suzuki violin teacher. I have 14 students right now. I finished grad school about 2 years ago, and I teach at my church. They let me use that space for free, and so some of my students are from there, and we were friends before I started teaching.
Got
And
it.
so yeah, that makes it a bit
Well, let's
complicated.
air this one out a little bit. And because what you're saying is you've got this policy now, you do used to not, and now you have a cancellation policy, I'm assuming, that says if you blow off lessons, I'm still going to charge you. Right? Are you do you do
Yes.
flat rate billing, or is that what let's talk about, let's
During
go.
the school year, I do.
Okay, so these folks are expecting is in a homey deal. If they miss a lesson, they want you to give them a refund or or a makeup. What is it they're asking for?
One of those two.
Are they
Usually it's a makeup.
are they saying, Anna, can we get them? We can't come today. Can we do a makeup tomorrow? Are they asking for it, or are you like, is that
They're asking for it, yes.
they're asking for it, and you have a no makeups policy?
I do a makeup if you let me know 2 weeks in advance.
Oh, I love your style. That's an amazing policy.
It is. It's great.
And what you and your friends want a little bit, they would appreciate being able to have makeup privileges with you, because and this is mainly with friends you're seeing it.
Yes, and actually it's even with students who are just strictly professional and I've always had a policy with them. They'll still ask for a
Well,
makeup.
I don't, I think there's going to be great ideas here. There's no one thing to do, right? Like some weeks you might be like, oh, I got tomorrow free and I just got a cancellation. I'd love to see this person. Like or you can simply just say, no, I can't. Like, no. I mean, no is just such a powerful sentence. And you can be so kind of, you got that smile and you're just like, no, no, I can't. I wish I could. Sorry.
Oh, I don't have time. Yeah, see you next week.
No, but I'll see you next week. You know, and if you feel really, and if there's something heavy, like if there's a recital coming up, right? That's I'm like, oh gosh, I know you have a show in 2 weeks, and I get it because I have a kid. And oh my gosh, like I'll squeeze you in. Like you can always go into your reserve of kindness and compassion for the moment, but your general answer of just no, I can't. I'm so sorry. I'm really busy this week. I'm booked up. Thanks. Not can't wait to see you next week. That's totally cool. And it teaches people too, it's so funny. I say this every week. Both my kids are athletes and my wife is an actor and I'm a guitar player. So we pay all these people to coach our kids, right? And to train our kids, which is why I was in Northgate by Jalena's house this morning, 6 a.m. Literally, I think I walked by your place today, not
Oh,
knowing that until this
you could
morning.
have come a couple miles up north.
Steve, I'm not going to call you at 5:45 in the morning. I mean,
Well,
Yeah, I'm
my-
with Steve.
yeah.
if you want to do a morning stroll, I'll be there. But anyway, everybody that I pay, we never think about it because they all just be like, yeah, it's this much a month. No, we'll go out of town on vacation. You don't think about it. And that's the beauty of adopting a flat rate billing model is you're like, oh, I've already factored all this in. And different billing models are different. If you do per appointment or you do old school invoicing, that's where it gets tricky. But in flat rate, it's really easy to train them into this idea. It's like, oh my gosh, of course. And you could do something like, you know what? I can't do a reschedule, but I'll send you like a quick video. Like my best friend's mandolin teacher just sent in this like 8-minute long video of the piece they're playing. It was totally, he couldn't make his lesson, paid for it, got the video of the lesson, totally pumped, right? Like that's a really cool in between. So I appreciate you sharing what your experience there, because I think we've all been there. And it's just not easy to say, well, I have a strict policy and I adhere to it, because it doesn't work. Every comment in like Piano Teacher Center, when I see someone write that, I was like, you don't say that. And if you do, no one will want to come hang out with you. Like, it's not how it works. So I don't, what's that? Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to chime in. Yeah, Kelly Reardon is a music teacher coach. One of her things is she says that your policies are like the strictest version of yourself. So that's like what's in writing. So then sometimes all the student is like, oh yeah, just this thing came up. And if I'm feeling it, I'll be like, I have a spot on Friday. It's not in my policy. I'm not guaranteed to make it up. And then like, oh, thank you so much. Then they're appreciative for me violating my own policy, which I do a lot if I feel like it. And the thing, I don't do the flat rate anymore, just since I was traveling and I had to cancel enough. I couldn't hold up my end of the deal. But as a flat rate, I would incorporate like a couple sick days for myself for the student, factor in this many lessons. They go, oh, I can't come. We got a concert. Can we make up? Like, hey, you've got a couple of those factored in to your tuition. See you next week. What became tough for me when I was trying to negotiate, does this person deserve a makeup or not? Did they give enough time, or they were sick, or there's an emergency? Just kind of figuring out to make the flat rate work, like doing whatever you can to not adjust the flat rate. Like when I did, like if I couldn't make it, sometimes I'd want to get a sub for myself just to make sure the flat rate was always the same and it was non-negotiable. So sometimes you can just tweak how the policies are written. It's like, oh yeah, well, you have a couple 6 days, you're not being charged for this one. It's all included or whatever. It's factored into the tuition. See you next week. Instead of I didn't like having the baggage of trying to keep track of how many makeups people thought they were entitled to. And at a point where someone's like, okay, well, I think you owe us 7 makeups this summer. I'm like, what are you talking about? As a, I'm like, well, the policy is it has to be made up within the month unless you let me know 1 week's notice, or you can switch with another student. I just realized, yeah, now that I'm doing more of the package model or by the lesson, like I can make it up if you're having a very clean way to not deal with trying to keep track of that stuff.
Hey, Anna, let me ask you one quick question, and then maybe even an encouragement is, after hearing all this, what if you shifted or considered the idea of shifting to just a no makeup policy? And then what we're talking about is like, be cool. Is just like, hey, because who's going to like request a makeup 2 weeks out? Is right. You're paying for the slot, but it can be that thing where you can be like, no, or every once in a while, like Steve was saying, yes, because I really want to see your child. I really want to do this thing. If it works for me, great. I wonder if having the makeup policy at all is what gets people their wheels rolling. And then back to the very beginning of the conversation today, and then we can move this around. In the moment that a friend says, "Hey, Anna, can we get a reschedule this week? We can't make it this afternoon. I have a dentist appointment. I forgot to tell you last week, but is it cool if we just come another day?" What emotion runs through your head? What, like, in that moment, what do you observe? Like, what is the thought process? And this is what you should be aware of, because this is where the learning comes, and this is where you can be like, oh, because it's fight or flight. What do you like? That's the moment, because are you feeling resentful? Like, this is the question. Are you feeling resentful? Do you feel angry? Do you feel like, oh God, this again? Do you feel annoyed? Do you feel frustrated? Do you feel disrespected? Because and who's thinking that, right? Because that's your mind as a tool to survive, not your mind as Anna. Do you get that? Does that make sense? Or is that too weird? Okay.
No, I do, but it's all of those feelings. It's frustration and resentment and
It doesn't feel good.
no.
Right. And so, and what Steve said before, it's like the idea is, how do we become non-reactive in that moment? The key to being non-reactive is to being absolutely present in the moment and to observe your emotions and to be like, oh, that's weird. I'm getting hot. Feel a little flush. That's resentment. Yep. That's kind of anger. And then from there, those emotions dissipate very quickly if you observe them. From that moment, you can switch it to trying to become compassionate to the person you're talking with and be like, we are friends. And maybe they don't know how to like communicate well with the piano teacher or their violin teacher. And maybe they're not as socially adept as I am. Right. And they're like, like, here I am really trying to do this thing and I'm aware of it. And then you've got your choice. Right. Then you've got your choice, which is no, I can't. And then you just let it go. You accept the moment. Or you say, yeah, I can do it this week. I'll do it Friday. I have an opening. I can't wait to see Johnny. It's going to be for you. I'll do this. Normally I don't. And you accept that. And then you're saying, cool, but whatever you do, you can accept it. Right. Because some days you'll be stronger than others. Some days you'll be like, whatever, get out of here. And some days you'll be like, okay, I'll do it. But those are all okay choices, So anyway, I hope that was a great example, because I hope that wraps a little bit what we talked about before. Right? Which is, you have options, you can address them in the moment, but the exercise for us as human beings is, how can we be non-reactive? How can we be less emotionally attached to the situation, right? And do it without feeling resentment, anger, frustration, disrespect, because that's not you, right? That's your mind creating something that's not necessarily true. And I think if you can practice that, it gets a lot easier. Right? To where no just comes right out. You're like, no, you're not even going to say, no, I'm sorry. It's just like, no, not this week. But, oh, Jelena, would you like to jump in?
So I'm Jelena and Alfred, and I don't teach music, even though I am a musician. I teach math. And I've mostly been working with middle school kids who are neurotypical, but I'm open at this point to helping coach people for SAT. And I'm also doing starting to do some resilience work with some of my students, to deal with stuff like test anxiety and just anxiety in general about doing math, which is very high. So let's see. So I wanted to share something that happened yesterday because it's pertinent to what we've been talking about. So I have one parent who has a child who's very ADHD, and the kid isn't even in school at this point. And I think she's just gotten into some kind of online schooling. And so she hasn't wanted to have sessions. And so she wanted to know what my refund policy was. Well, I've got a very small tutoring business. It's I would call it a boutique practice. It's just really small. I don't even have a policy written, but I don't refund packages when people buy them because they buy them at a discount. So, but she asked me, and I'm sitting there, well, I don't really have a policy, but I'm not planning on refunding it. And so I looked, and I was clear with where I was, and I said, no, I don't refund it. And she accepted that. And she said, oh, well, then, okay, if, child A isn't using services, child B, you can do some tutoring with child B. And I said, that's fine, and so it got her switched off of the automatic pull in another package, because I didn't think she wanted to do that if she didn't know what was going on. And, it all went very smoothly. So um, all okay.
Did you
So,
feel when that conversation started? You don't seem like you seemed like you were too bothered by it. You sound like you seem like you were pretty much
I
cool
think
about it.
I rolled with it okay, but it was like, there's probably some way I could set some kind of policy or write some kind of policy and avoid being in that situation in
But
the
nobody
future.
reads them anyway. And then
Yeah, that's
and like
true.
and this is like number 7,000 things and like the other groups. I'm like,
Right.
dude, stop. I have it in my policy you signed right here. It's like no one
And people
reads
go,
that.
who cares?
No one cares. Like
And they're
totally.
nearly impossible to enforce if it becomes like what they're gonna take you
Go
to
to
small claims court.
I
Yeah,
love it when
right.
people are like,
It's
take him
not-
to small claims court. It's like, oh my gosh,
No,
that is
sometimes
so dumb.
Eric, you say this sometimes just even if it's not in your policy, sometimes the refund to make if there's some real conflict and they're not happy with what they're getting, sometimes the refund is like a great use of, hey, are we even? This problem's gone. It was a good investment in my business to just refund.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
Farewell.
they're
go
not
get
going to
yourself
rant
some
about you
therapy.
online.
yeah, yeah. So
Yes.
I spend a lot of time with this particular person because I've allowed her to cancel fairly last minute because her kid has iron deficiency and doesn't always have energy after a day of school. And so we I just said, just let me know in the morning if she's going to do her session. I mean, I don't do that for anybody else, but she's got, the kid does have issues. And so, I mean, I've been really nice to her regarding whatever policy I do or don't have written, but so I mean, I think that's one of the reasons that she was okay with what I said. Was it wasn't unreasonable, and I mean, she has gotten most of what she's asked for. So,
Well, you have a very calm demeanor too, and it just feels like most people are going to be reasonable. Like that's the reality is most folks are we in our minds we're so anxiety prone to think that they're not going to be, but most people are going to be. That's a reasonable outcome. And like
right,
I was thinking the same thing is there comes a point in those conversations when it gets nasty,
you got to cut
which that happens, and you're like,
pace.
oh my
Yeah,
gosh, take your money back, be well, go to a therapist, but like I have to remove. This is where that's the third option. I'm removing myself from the scene because
yeah,
this money's not worth it to me. So, because I'm not going to carry your anger or whatever the thing that you're not getting. That is an investment in wellness for yourself. And, obviously you didn't need to have that, but that's a great plan C.
yeah,
So
yeah.
thanks for bringing that
there
up.
are times, yeah. So what my edge at the moment is trying to change my pricing structure. I've been doing packages, and I'm not making enough money to pay my taxes is what it comes down to. So I need to raise my rates, and I'm thinking about some kind of subscription or flat rate kind of thing, which is harder for teaching math because most people expect their math student to be off in the summer. So as opposed to music where you might expect them to be doing it 10 months of the year. So I'm trying to up that expectation. Most of my students are going to be doing at least some sessions in the summer. So, but they wouldn't be as full time. So,
Jelena, I've got, this is for another conversation. If you ping me, I'd love to share. I've got some really great research because I've been working with a bunch of different small boutique tutoring firms. So I'm really
okay.
interested in it, like SAT, ACT prep,
Mhm.
AP, and how they work it, how the community models they build, how they're different than music. And there are people who are, and I also know the Seattle demographic really well. So I would be happy to spend a few minutes just chatting with you about that because I think I've seen the models are like a little bit different than what we might want to do with like a music school, but they're really close, and how your intensity and your frequency is different because sometimes you're wanting to see kids 2 or 3 times a week to prepare them for an ACT, or maybe so. I'd love to chat with you about that.
Okay, great. I will ping you.
You know what? I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to pipe in. Deanna or Rachel, I see you there, and I don't know if you don't feel any pressure. You don't have to. You're welcome to just hang out. But if you'd like to jump in, please do.
Sure. Hi, I'm Rachel Crowder. This is my first mastermind session to join, so I'm stoked to be here.
Wait, where are you from? Tell us about yourself. I feel like I
just-
know you too. That's weird. I feel like you seem so familiar.
Well, we've connected, and I'm very active in the Fons Family.
Yeah, but I feel like
find so much value there.
This is your first mastermind?
It is because I wasn't able to attend one previously because
That's right.
Actually, a student rescheduled, and that was the only time they could reschedule.
Well, tell us where you're from and go and what you do and jump right in. Thanks, Rachel.
Okay, sure. So I am a private academic tutor and swim instructor in Houston, Texas. And so I work with students in person and online. And unlike most tutors, I work with a very wide range of ages and subjects. So it keeps things interesting for me. But I have found that I'm at this juncture where I need to re-examine my policies going into the next school year. And so I really thought this would be a good mastermind to join. Um, I'm considering trying the flat rate billing model, but I'm scared. And I'm going to have to reprogram my clients' expectations around cancellations and makeup because, frankly, they've abused my written policy and I've allowed it. And so there's, a significant amount of reconditioning that's going to have to take place at this point. And I really would love to learn from you all what's worked. With a flat rate policy, I'm considering offering a standard set of days weekly or a standard set of hours where makeups can be scheduled and just have that be what's offered. And if that's not conducive to your family's schedule, I'm so sorry, but that's, where my makeup.
Can I interrupt you for just a second, Rachel?
Yes,
Are we talking mostly about are we talking mostly about your academic?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
thinking of my academic students. So with my
do you teach in
swim students, it's
cohorts?
a little different.
Yeah. Let's talk about the academics just because I think they'll be, I know that space too. But
Okay.
you're talking about this flat rate for your academic students. Do you teach in cohort at all?
I don't. I am an individual private tutor. I've got an LLC established and I don't have any employees. I'm not interested in managing others.
Oh, I mean, do you have students come like 2 or 3 at a time and
Oh,
work?
I understand your question. No, my lessons are mostly one-to-one. I do make exceptions for group sessions, and I just introduced that this year. The only families who have taken advantage of that are families with early literacy learners.
Okay.
But
Got it. And so are the more, sorry, I'm asking so many questions to interrupt
no,
you.
these are great questions,
the
and those are
majority of
in-person lessons.
they're in person. Are the majority of your students, what are they? Are they high school? Or are they middle school?
No, I've got they run the gamut, and also the demographics shift significantly year to year based on whoever's has me tutoring their kids at that time and is referring me out to folks, and then those parents jump on board. So I've had years where I solely tutored college age students.
Okay,
And I've
got
had
it.
students that were only in high school some years. And now it seems I've got a younger demographic because word spread like wildfire about my early literacy and math tutoring for youngers. So it's just shifted year to year. I've been tutoring for over 10 years now, and it's never been consistent year to year.
Okay, we should
Based on
do,
referrals.
I should schedule a tutoring connection because we have there's hundreds of tutors in our community that probably are having similar things. And I'm really interested in it too. And it all applies to whatever it's all the same, to be honest. But I just wanted to say thanks for actually being honest and being like, yeah, they take advantage of my written policy. That's because nobody reads it. And we've developed this one-on-one relationship. That's what actually happens. And if you go to whatever the big tutor group, which I follow everything that goes in that, same thing. Every comment's like, well, I have this policy and I'm like this. It's like, no, you don't. That's not what actually, you're typing that in, but that's not what happens in real life. You're being honest. And what you want to do, and I would love to air this out with you because I can tell that you really care about your kids and your students. I can hear that in the way you talk. And the anxiety, I think your anxiety is actually, in this case, is worth having because you're thinking through making a substantial shift into how you do things. Kids come in and out. This is instead of looking at this anxiously, this is a scenario where it's like, oh, let's really think it through because you're right. Making a shift this big could cause big ripples in that space because from what they're used to, unless you introduce something that's adds so much value to their situation. For instance, I know these prep tutors and they're like a couple and they've been doing it forever. And like they're like go down to like they'll set up shop in San Francisco around AC. I mean, they're really cool. And they have it set up, it's flat rate, and it's a tremendous amount of money. I'm not even going to talk about that. But they have people will come and they'll have a time. It's like, hey, come from 9 to 11:30. And they'll show up and there'll be 4 other kids there that are matched to similar, they do this like magic to where they're all going to like each other. And if they don't like each other, that's on purpose too. Like, right, they've done this thing and it's like they make money, like a lot. And their trip, they understand how people work together. They provide great value. But when they introduced this kind of flat rate idea, they did it with a twist, right? And so like kids go to this thing, and I know people that have taught with them. I know people that have studied with them that I've taught to, and I'm really intrigued by it because kids don't want to miss it, right? It's like they might be with someone they're competing with, or they might be someone that's exactly just like them, but it's like it's kind of like how I like to put together musical groups. I throw that out there just because that's one example of something that might put some energy into your change that would make it really easy to take. Yeah, sure, you're going to make 4 times as much money. That's awesome. It'll also take care of rescheduling. It'll take care of your billing issue. It will justify going into a flat rate billing thing. And but this is a conversation that I think we could really take aside. And before you just jump out and say, let's talk about this in the group, let's air this out. Because maybe what you just need to do is significantly raise your rates for what you've been doing. Right. And maybe that's another solution. But you want to do something that can make this work for you, we want to remove your bottlenecks. The bottlenecks are people taking advantage of your policy, asking for makeups. We can find a way to take that out in a beautiful way. And I think that would be the real goal, that you feel good about before you launch it.
Okay, I've really got to make some big decisions in the next 6 to 8 weeks because I need to roll out whatever is the new structure in time for folks to enroll for fall semester going forward.
Let's hold hands and jump together.
Confidently.
Yeah, you're going to be great. Yeah. I saw somebody's hand up, but I'm all. Yeah, go ahead, Teresa, and then I want to make sure Deanna gets to go too.
Right. Real quickly, we are all nurturers, but we got to think like lawyers. Because lawyers, their business is law, but also dealing with people. They charge you. You do not engage in casual conversation with a lawyer. You buy them for their expertise, and they make sure they are charging enough that you take them seriously. The weirdest thing for me to learn is as I keep increasing, people take my prices, people take me more seriously. And they don't waste my time. As I get more successful and do not have holes to plug, they take me more seriously. Even if you have a limited thing, you've got your schedule, and if your schedule is full with 14 students, your schedule is full.
You know what? And Teresa, you've been a great example of that over time. Because when you started your journey in the last couple of years, you were like feeling like, oh man, having these struggles with those getting people to show up, getting people to pay you enough. And as you've just been doing this with your rates and it seems like you seem way more relaxed now than you did 3 years ago in your teaching, but you're also more full, you're making more money, and you keep saying, oh, people keep treating me better, right? But you're still the same person. You've just kind of slowly been rolling out these really great changes that have really, proven that model, so
yeah.
I like what you're saying there.
The one last thing too is for me personally, because I do argue. So the question is this the hill I want to die on?
Yeah.
And 97% of the time, 98, 99, that's not where I'm dying.
Yep. And I think what she's saying, Rachel, that really could speak to you is like, before you roll these things out, you can roll them out really mindfully and be like, these are the areas that cause me anxiety. These are the areas that cause me, time constraints and challenges. These are the things I'm not willing to deal with anymore, or that I've been dealing with that I'd prefer not to. And how can I use my policies and my new model coming up in the fall to really convey that, to do the heavy lifting for you? And you
That's
can
what I
do that.
need.
And I think this is and maybe what you can do is map this out, because I think most people feel like you feel. I think the people that say, I have a policy and I'm just strict to it, I'm amazed. I think they actually are doing reschedules. They're being pushed around. They just say this in group because it's so easy to type stuff. I do the same thing. That's why we're having this talk, because I'm all like, just do this and be strong. And then in real life, I'm like whining to my students, trying to explain myself. Well, actually, it's like, it's fine. So it really was illuminating. And I think it'd be great if you map this out, execute it, and then share it, because I bet it would help a lot of people. So,
Okay. Thanks for the encouragement.
oh my gosh, thanks for being here. It's so cool to hear about what you're up to. This is an amazing chat. Deanna, I wanted to make sure you had a chance to share too, because I can go a little bit over. I have a meeting in 15 minutes, but I've got a little bit of time I can hang out if anybody else needs to.
Okay. Well, I'll make it kind of quick because I'm not sure. I mean, I'm a mostly online. I am a completely online teacher actually in Austin, just north of Austin, and I teach piano. My husband is a fiddle teacher, and he's about I guess he's about 50% online and 50% in person. We live in a really tiny house. He teaches at our neighbor's house. So it's a little bit of a weird situation. We went from a huge music school with 180 students and teachers and everything, and then we downsized with COVID, and then went to online, and then I have been kind of hybrid since then. So where our goal though is to be fully online, and we're building courses and we're kind of doing all this other stuff. So our youngest is about to graduate in a year from now, and so we're hoping to be able to be a little more mobile in our life. So we don't have, like, I listen with interest to the makeup discussions, and I think maybe it's partly where we live, and it's partly, I mean, everybody's just so busy, and so we really don't have the makeup discussion almost ever. The only times we ever do makeups are if we cancel lessons. People don't even ask anymore, and I think that's just because, like you've talked about, we trained them that we just don't really do that. But we've used all the different apps because they just keep going out of business on us. But we're currently using Practice Space, so we send so much content after every lesson and if they miss a lesson or whatever, it's just like, well, you're still gonna get, you're gonna get your video, you're gonna get your PDF, you're gonna have all of your stuff, and so people are not really, they don't really get upset. They feel like they got what they paid for, I guess, so, but we are at this point where we really need to raise our rates. We have not raised our rates since 2020, although we're a little bit higher than we were, for new people that have come in, but we have students that have been taking lessons from us for 7 years, so
hey, what's up?
How's it going?
Hey, nice to see you.
You too.
Yeah.
Hey, it's the fiddle guy.
It's the fiddle dude.
The fiddle guy.
Yeah,
All
right.
about you.
Cool. So you went, I mean, I'm really curious about two things. Like, one is you went from a school of 150 students, and like, you all you're not exuding much stress or anxiety into the, I mean, this could be the Zoom thing. You seem pretty relaxed, right? So what's and I could be projecting that because you just said you had a school with 150 students and now you're, it's just the two of you, I'm guessing. Is that, and you're all online?
Yeah.
Or mostly online? What's that transition?
Those numbers are kind of in the rear view mirror.
Honestly. Oh yeah, those are far in the rear. Yeah, we probably teach, what do we teach? 50 students between the two of us right now, barely.
That's a nice community though. Yeah. And where do they live? You said you're online. I mean, that's a great community of humans to have a couple manage. Okay, they're all around.
Yeah, and a lot of them are local-ish to us because they were in our studio, so a lot of them are local, but we do have students now, in Washington and in Arizona and Maine and, kind of like around the country. So I teach like half of my family, which is I can identify with Anna's problems because I have like my aunt and my cousin and my nephews and niece, and it's like, oh, I don't want to be too mean to my family. So,
Of course.
so
Yeah.
that's
Gosh, interesting. And
I know.
and so your big thing right now is you're like, oh, we're at a point and you need to raise your rates too. That's going to be, yeah, that sounds really fun.
But because we have such a small amount of students, it's like, okay, if we raise the rates as much as we really need to raise the rates, and then we lose even a couple of students, we'd probably notice. Like it would affect the bottom line. Usually you figure, some will fall and it's okay. But yeah, we're kind of at this weird tipping point. So we're trying to have this sort of like less expensive option that we can offer and say, hey, like if you can't afford our new rates, which we really want to go like way up there, that's our goal is to go.
Well, we feel like people value it more.
Yeah, and you guys were just talking about that. Like the more you charge,
They
like
do.
Teresa said.
And you always, and especially since, you have to consider demographic, you have to consider where you are. And since you're online, it doesn't matter. But like, I would really encourage, again, what we talked about at the beginning of the day. You're like, well, we want to have a less expensive option for when they complain. Well, maybe just say, this is our new rate. And we've been doing this forever. We didn't raise our rates through COVID. You don't even need to explain it. You're like, this is what we're going to.
Right.
And
right.
Everyone here will tell you what's going to happen. No one's going to say anything. And the people that you sense it and they're like, hey, then you're like, oh my gosh, how can we help make this work for you? Because we got you. We get it. We're creatives. That's the exercise, is to go big. And if you can't bring yourself to do that, is try it with new students first. So then you can see them say, oh, it's no big deal.
Oh, yeah.
But we
can see, we're charging like way more for our new students and nobody's batting an eye. They're like, oh, okay, that's what it costs.
I did the same thing because I was too chicken to raise my rates on the old people. And then, my former students, old or young, but, and I think I shared this in the group too, but then I told people, hey, I'm raising my rates January 1st. I did it this year. Here's my new rates. These have been my rates for the last couple of years, but you've been grandfathered in at the old rate. I'm bringing you up. But hey, if you're experiencing financial difficulties, we'll make it work. I'm looking forward to making music with your kid. It's part of Eric's prompt. So that was a little explaining. Hey, you've been getting a deal. I'm moving it up. But then I would say it like if you're experiencing financial difficulties, not like if you want a deal. Because sometimes people who are looking for deals, they also don't want to admit that they're poor. Because like, oh no, I'm very frugal and I'm very.
Well, that's the deal. I save my people that need help. You have to identify them and offer it, because those people will try to pay you.
Then I offer some pro bono lessons to amazing kids that, it's like, well, I don't even have to ask. I know this kid lives in like mixed income housing, like an apartment across the way, and he's so into it. Like, I didn't even talk about money. Just like, come on over. Not like, do you want a little bit of a discount? That wasn't going to do it. So I could probably just do the whole thing again. But that's a good angle to say, hey, you've been getting the lower rate. We're moving everyone up. Have you seen the price of cream cheese lately? No, don't say that. But
another really cool thing too is like what will happen is when you're the handful of people that will say, oh, I'm glad you're doing this because I'm really glad to see you're doing this to take care of yourself. That feels so good because you're gonna get that when they're like, of course, thanks. We're so happy. Yeah. So.
And I think you're right, because our students have been with us a long time.
To be clear, we do have a couple that have offered already.
Yeah, we even have students that have said, hey, you should raise your rates.
This is the deal. Like, you obviously have the energy of people that like love doing this, got to make a living. And like the people who are coming to you, we really like all the coaches I pay for my kids. I so want them to be in the game and eating like all the things. Like, they're your family. Like, you're the coolest part of these kids' day. And like the parents are leaning on you because you're the reason their kids are like growing up cool and expressive and like doing cool things. I don't know. So when are you going to roll it out? Fall? Like, what's your
probably fall. Yes.
Yeah.
We have a lot of we're going to be messing with their schedules quite a bit this summer, so we're coming to Washington. So
oh man, if you're in Seattle, look me up. We'll have a croissant or something.
We will. Yeah, that would be fun. We're teaching at the Washington State Old Time Fiddlers Camp in Kashmir.
Cool. Oh, very cool.
And, so that will be. That's the main purpose, but we're doing a show in Spokane, a couple shows in Spokane, and I have family in Olympia, so we'll be on that side of the state.
Well, if you find yourself in Seattle, drop us a line. We'll go to Steve's backyard and tear it up together.
Yeah, there we
Hey.
go. Yeah, cool.
Anyway, well, hey, I got to wrap up in about 2 minutes. Hey, thank you for sharing that, both of you, because I've been following your journey a little bit just through the socials, but it's great to just hear a little bit more about what you're doing, and I wish you best of luck. And
Yeah, I
Thank you,
gotta
you
go.
too.
you got to go. And Daniel, I just see you there, but I didn't see you here until just now. But Daniel. Hey, thanks for pitching that. I'm sorry I didn't see you until just now, Daniel. And thanks for being here. Have you been here? I don't know if you've been here the whole time, but I think you were maybe listening. And I'm sorry I didn't type into you until just now. And thanks for adding that. You got to go, Teresa?
Yep.
Hey,
Yes.
friends. Me too. Hey, thank you so much for being here. This was an amazing
Thank
conversation.
you.
It's just good to
Thanks.
spend a
Bye,
little
all.
time together, and we'll do it again soon.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, you're
Thank
welcome.
you,
Have a
Eric.
great day. Bye-bye,
Yeah.
friends.
Bye.